Today, it's going to be my favorite topic, right? It's about fatherhood and how amazing fatherhood is. Kind of the views on fatherhood. Maybe we can talk about how can we become better fathers, and really take ownership of our families and be the father that our fathers were not, or even better than our fathers were. Inshallah.
So I'm surprised you mentioned that of all the topics we've done, you said fatherhood's your favorite. Why is that?
Because being a father is my favorite role, right?
Wow.
So like when I think about Islam, or when I think about assessing myself, right? I think about, okay, how am I in relation to certain things? So I think, okay, how am I in relation to my wife, my parents, my siblings, to my son, and primarily to my son, right? Like most of my concentration and my thoughts are going to how can I be a good father, best father, and obviously, but I don't know if the listeners know that I've been married, alhamdulillah, for about 14 years, and we tried to have a child for a very, very long time. All right, it was about 10 years, and we went through everything you can think of. And alhamdulillah, we tried all these interventions, but subhanallah, without any intervention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a beautiful boy. And that's just been like a miracle for me, and like everything that I've dreamed of, everything I've worked for, alhamdulillah, I just thank Allah for giving me that, and all my concentration goes to my son.
Yeah.
So that's why it's my favorite topic.
That's good to hear. And what's interesting about this video is our different stages in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So you just shared a little bit of context about your path to fatherhood, right? It was a little bit. It took a little bit of time, but alhamdulillah, you got there, right? And you got an amazing son, and I have an amazing nephew now, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
So it's interesting for me for this video because I don't have kids, so I'm not in a position at all to give advice. So I want to be the one asking you questions because you've been in the game for a little bit more than me. So my attitude towards kids in the beginning was a little bit negative, in my opinion, a little bit, because I think it was maybe just a lack of self esteem. I've thought about this over some time that in the beginning when I was getting married, I was thinking, man, obviously it'd be nice to have kids, but when you think about the logical aspect of it and the care and the constant attention they need, man, it's hard to like get myself excited for it, right?
Yeah.
And it took me a little bit of time to get over that negativity and realize the benefits of it. So basically, my question to you is: did you always want to be a father growing up, or was it something that you had to grow into, like me, or was it always just a field you had from the beginning?
No, I kind of grew into it. Like I knew when I got married, so I got married really young. I was like 21, 22 when I got married. So at 21, 22, I definitely was not thinking of kids. But in middle of law school, like my second year, going into my third year, that's when it's like, that urge started to happen, right? And so I'm like 23, 24, 25 maybe. And that's when I'm like thinking, wow, subhanAllah, how amazing would it be if like, I had a kid with me at my graduation, So that was like my dream in law school. So I think I had to grow into it and want it and like get that fatherly urge. And I think that many guys can, actually attest to that it just kind of crept up on them, and it's like this, you just need it.
Yeah, so you said 23, 24, right? So that was a couple years into your marriage?
Yes.
So basically, that's the stage I'm in right now.
Yeah.
Because I've been married, I think, over 2.5 years, something like
Yeah.
that, right? And now I'm starting to feel
Yeah.
that loneliness, right? Because we had our vacations, we've had our time together, but there has to be a next evolution to this marriage.
Yeah.
There has to be another layer.
Yeah.
And kids is that layer. Because we maximize everything in our lives right now, just the two of us.
Yeah.
What's next? We can't. There's no way this could be our life for the next 30, 40 years that we're living.
Yeah.
There has to be something more. So now I'm getting to that stage where alhamdulillah, I'm starting to feel the purpose of kids. So now that you have a kid and inshallah more to come,
Inshallah.
is this now your main purpose in life? Are you past the education, past the money, and this is your main focus in life now?
I would think so. I mean, I think that the education, the money, the business, the fitness, like all of that is with the intention of serving my family, and in particular my child, right? Like I think about health, for example. Like, Baba, for example, not very healthy. Many of our uncles, many of our own fathers, right? They're not very healthy. They didn't take health. I mean, they hustled, right? But they didn't take health too seriously. And I see kind of how that's impacting, interaction with grandkids. And I want to make sure that I can be there, physically. When it comes to money, like I want to make sure that I can provide, whatever he wants, right? School wise, education wise, opportunity wise, whatever he gets into, be able to maximize it, right? So like all of that now I'm thinking, okay, it's not for me to accumulate it in my bank account. It's for me to provide what I can for, my son.
For sure. So that leads to my next question. You mentioned a couple of things that usually people look at as categories to self improve. But how does self improvement, that journey of self improvement, lead to being a great father?
I think that the self improvement aspect, there has to be like a goal of all that. Like, you're self improving for what? Just for the sake of improving yourself? No, you have to have a goal, and whether that's improving yourself to serve the community, improving yourself to serve your wife or your parents, but improving yourself to be a great father is, I think, the ultimate goal and the ultimate purpose of self improvement. Like, when they tell you, like, you need to be stable and you need to earn money, like, yeah, if it was just you could live in a box somewhere, we don't care.
Yeah.
But that drive and that purpose is really comes through having that kid.
For sure, because nowadays a lot of the content that we hear on YouTube, especially as a man, is the red pill movement, right? Yeah. And they stress similar things. They stress the importance of self improvement. You got to get your money right, your health right, but their reasoning to improve those things is not necessarily the right way to go, right? They're saying that to, like, get more women, they're woman focused, right?
SubhanAllah.
So we have the similar message, but our frame of thinking to improve is for a way deeper purpose.
Absolutely,
them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is for your wife, but it's for your son, and it's for your daughter, it's for your grandchildren. Like, our vision is so much farther than just right here and that, right here and now, right? Like, the best thing that you can do for your child is to pick their mother properly.
That's a great way to look at things, and I think a lot of people miss out on that.
Yeah.
That they want someone that's, like, attractive. They want someone that that's basically one of the main purposes people get married nowadays. But you don't realize that that beauty fades away, and you really need to look for someone that will be a good mom.
Yeah.
When people are looking to get married, people just want someone that's attractive, but that's, like, such a small percentage of marriage, man. When you get into marriage, you realize that, like, physical attraction is such a small percentage. It doesn't make any part of marriage, really. Like, the main part is being a good wife and being a good mom. You have to look for those qualities.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
So now that you have a son, right, what are some challenges that you see as a divorce attorney, right? A lot of times people have that negative misconception saying that women initiate the divorce, which is true.
Yeah.
But what are some faults that you see in men that you either defend or you're against that you wish that you tell people not to direct, like, not to be like? Yeah. Like, what are some qualities that you see in men that you wish people would avoid, or what are some negative qualities people have as fathers?
So, as fathers, I mean, there's a lot of absentee fathers, right? Absolutely. Like, there's this interesting thing where, like, maybe I don't know where the heck we get it from, our parents or, some uncle or something like that. But, the guy thinks that they're supposed to go to work. They come home and they sit on the couch and that's it. Like, it's literally their wife's job to raise the kids. No input, no interest, not playing with them, nothing. Like, you're literally just an ATM for your children, right? Yeah. So I see that in my cases where, like, the father has no care for the kid. Honestly, as long as he can do what he needs, he has freedom, he's going to be happy. Doesn't even know what grade their kid is and nothing, subhanAllah. So I see that extreme of it where there are bad dads, absolutely. And subhanAllah, that has such a huge impact on these kids. But I also see, the qualities of certain mothers who are keeping away fathers who want to be involved.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, you know what? Dad hasn't done anything before. Even though he would play, he would still spend time with them. He didn't do the caretaking functions, and therefore he's not good enough to take care of the kids. It's like, dude, he can learn in one day how to change a diaper, how to, like, that's not the hard part. Yeah. And so you see many mothers who are keeping away their fathers because they didn't do the caretaking functions.
Yeah. And what I get scared of with women is men have to develop that emotional attachment. Women already have that almost instilled in them, that nurturing quality for other people. Sometimes for men, it takes a little bit of time to practice that.
Yeah.
And I would just hope that women be a little bit more patient with men who didn't have that growing up, because men growing up usually are told to guard their emotions, not express them. And then when you have a kid, you have all this emotion and you just don't know how to express it, right? Yeah. So I hope women just are more patient with us men. So now we're all desis, right? And as a desi man, there's always, like, random negative connotations with being too nurturing towards your kid, right?
Yeah, it's so sad, man. It's so sad. Like, it's so weird. Like, we're not supposed to change your kid's diaper or some crap, right? Like, there's that aspect of it. Or, like, you're not supposed to get close to your daughters. Like, man, that's so sad to me.
Yeah.
Where like this desi culture of the mom deals with the daughter is so backwards, because it's the father who has such a big impact on the daughter, and that's going to frame their interaction with other men.
Yeah.
Right? Like if they don't get that love and validation from their father, they're going to go and seek it elsewhere. And our desi culture is almost setting that up to happen.
Yeah, the whole phrase of daddy issues is real. Yeah. It's a real thing.
It's
right?
absolutely a real thing.
Yeah.
And there's this book called Boy Crisis. I'm sure I've mentioned it in other videos, but man, that book is ridiculous. It talks about what special factors does a father bring to his children, right? Like discipline, being able to delay gratification in their impulses. And there's so many statistics about like fatherless homes, but there's also statistics on custody, when father wins custody versus when mother wins custody. That many times the children are better off when father wins custody, because they're able to instill that type of discipline and routine and those boundaries through play and all these other things, soft skills that the mom can't bring.
For sure, because men instill that structure because that's how we have to survive and succeed, right?
Yeah.
To have discipline and structure. Like if you talk to your mom and you show her that you want some adversity in your life and you want to go to this school, you want to travel out of state, they want to coddle you. They're like, no, don't do it. Yeah. Usually men are like, you know what, you should go for it and do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You might fail, but that's part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we take more risks. We're going to be a little bit more aggressive when we play, right? Like, but that's life. Like being able to teach your kids to be comfortable in their body, right? Through wrestling, through fighting, and through throwing them around. Like that's a very important part of being a father. Teaching them how to be winners, teaching them how to be losers when they win or lose a game. When it comes to fathers are more likely to enforce borders, our boundaries, right? Like if we say you need to put your jacket on, we're gonna be the ones to make sure they get their jackets on,
right?
Whereas maybe mom is gonna be soft or ends up doing it themselves, or what I mean. Like fathers are more likely to do that, but women look at these qualities as negative qualities,
right?
Even though this is the discipline and the boundary setting that so many single mother households are craving.
Right, and it's not even just women's fault, it's just society pushing that narrative too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, society is pushing down, like, the masculine, energy.
No, father's gone. Like, basically the state has replaced the father.
Yeah, oh, wow.
Right, because they're the ones who are now providing welfare. You don't need the father for money.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to provide daycare. They're the ones who are giving all of these benefits that the father was supposed to provide. And what's so crazy to me is that a father going to the park with their kids is looked at differently than a woman or a mother taking their kids to it's almost like people are skeptical of the father bringing the child and think that like he's like an abductor or some crap like that. Like, wow. This is how bad that society looks at fathers.
It's like almost a society is so like perverted.
Absolutely.
We just like men are just accused of being like child molesters or something, just to take your own kid somewhere.
It's so crazy.
It's so sad that society that we live in now, it's basically there's no rules. Yeah. You could be called whatever you want, you could do whatever you want, and men are there to establish rules.
Yeah.
And that's why men are being pushed out, because we're the ones who establish rules. I'm saying husbands. Husbands are the roles of a husband is being diminished because we're established rules, but society is not allowing rules to happen anymore. Everyone could be whatever they want now.
There you go.
Yeah.
And like that's the whole thing, right? Like if you have an atomized society, individualistic society, like that caters, really to this narrative of anti-masculinity. And when it comes to raising children, right, I think some of those things that we call toxic is actually necessary to make sure that our kids grow up properly, to have confidence, to have courage, to have assertiveness, to have physicality, to have, these things are quote unquote manly traits, but that's what's going to make them successful in life.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I like to mention too is, how you mentioned earlier that they see dads, like they almost frowned upon when they do like their daughter's hair or they like change the diapers. But if you just look at Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what he would do in the past, Like there's a famous story of when his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha would walk into the room.
Subhanallah.
You know, usually dads, you know,
Yeah.
if a daughter comes in, he wouldn't even say salam. He
Yeah.
waits for their kid to say salam first before they say
Yeah.
salam
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
The dads wouldn't even do it. You know what Muhammad did in that story?
Sallallahu
When
alaihi
Fatima radiallahu anha walked into his house, he got up out of his seat. He like kissed her on the forehead and told his daughter to take my seat.
Subhanallah.
Take my seat. And even think about the Arabs back in that day too.
Yeah.
They were like
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah,
They
for
even
sure.
they didn't even want daughters to exist.
Yeah, they didn't even want the Prophet ﷺ to kiss his grandsons.
Yeah, they would think that that's weird. Like
Oh
you're
yeah,
kissing your,
yeah. They wanted to bury their daughters.
they wanted to
exactly.
bury their daughters at that time, and
Yeah.
someone against the grain back then and said, "No, I want to cherish my daughters. I want to cherish all of my kids."
Yeah.
And nowadays, we just if our daughter doesn't say Islam to us first, or son doesn't say Islam to us first, we won't say Islam to them.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times.
No, it's like this pride thing. I mean, obviously, look, yes, being a father is a respectful role,
Yeah.
and you know, your children should respect you. That's what I think every father would love. But at the same time, it gets earned, right? It's not just going to be given. And you're right. Like the Prophet ﷺ showed so much love that he wasn't the disciplinarian at every stage of the game, right? Like there's instances of play, there's instances of love, there's instances of gratitude, there's all of these different emotions that the Prophet ﷺ had with his children and his grandchildren,
For sure.
right? And we're like these, you know, the dimensional fathers who only, you know, ask about the grades or, you know, get mad at them because they're spending too much money.
For sure. So now, because I mentioned that hadith or that story, I want to ask you now, how is your intention going to be different when you raise a daughter, if that ever happens one day, versus how you raise a son? What's the dynamic going to be?
I think it's going to be different, right? And you know that I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, you got to raise men and boys and girls, you know, the same." I don't believe that whatsoever. I think that there's certain qualities of men, there's certain qualities of women, boys, girls, and so I think when it comes to basic life skills, right? Absolutely, you know, teach independence, teach survival, right? To both children and to be good citizens of this world, to be good Muslims, to love Allah, to know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, obviously that goes both ways. But when it comes to success or your role in the world, I do think that I am going to stress things a little differently between the two. Now, I understand that society is moving to this like androgynous, you know, kind of outlook on life where there's no such thing as boys and girls and, you know, there's one role and they're exactly the same, you know, good luck. But I think that to teach our children the beauty of being a mother, right? So for my daughter, to be a mother is like the life goal. For the son, it's to be a father is the life goal, right?
Wow.
And using career, using education to support that role in the world, I think is how, inshallah, I would love to, and I think how we should cater and educate our children so that our name can survive, Islam can survive, that they have a happy family life. Like, you look at these studies about who's happy, it's the people who have families, the people who have relationships.
Yeah.
So why are we teaching our kids that happiness is career when we know it's not true, and we know all the studies are showing that's not true?
You know what's so sad is what you said, that you want to teach your daughter that the goal in life should be a good mother, and the goal for a son is to be a good father, right?
Yeah.
Why is that the first time I heard that? Why is it that every time I hear how you should raise your son or daughter, they should want them to be career oriented and be like the most like strongest one and have the most money? Why is that the first time we've heard that?
Yeah, subhanAllah, man. I mean, it's funny because it might sound like weird, but like, that's truly what I believe.
Yeah.
It's truly. I mean, look. Here's the other thing. The people might push back and say, "Well, what if you can't have kids?" Okay, that's the exception.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, you know, I felt like I was in that role. I almost accepted that I might not be a father. Right. And so, like, obviously, I get that. Right. But I'm talking for as generally the majority. Right. Inshallah, Allah grant us children, or what, you know. There's different ways for us to serve Allah. There's different ways for us to get closer to Allah. But, you know, we're talking about fatherhood in particular. But yeah, I don't think that's a very revolutionary statement to say that.
For sure. And I think part of being a good father too, obviously I don't know because I'm not a father, but one thing that a good father is someone that your kids admire or
Yes.
respect, right?
Yes, yes.
So what would be some ways to make sure that you set up some type of you have your kids inspired by you? What are some ways that a father what could a father do to make sure that their kids respect them and look up to them? Because I think that's the key to success.
No, it is. I mean, you have to lead by example, right? You have check yourself in every area of your life, in your Islam, in your relationships, in your education, in your fitness, the way you treat people, the way you treat your kids, the way you treat your wife. Like, check yourself on all of these things because your kids are watching you, right? And the best way that people become Muslim is through observation. The best way our kids are going to learn is going to be through observation. We can preach all we want and teach all we want, but if we're not walking the walk, then how can we expect our kids to follow?
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. I think about that too. Like, if you're going to be a father, you tell your kids it's important to pray 5 times a day and fast, but you're not doing it yourself.
For sure.
It's just like your advice is laying on deaf ears. It's not going to do anything, right? So what would your advice be to people who have a negative outlook like I did in the past to having kids? People say, you know what, this world is such a dangerous place. There's gun violence. There's these like the LGBT stuff like that. Well, what would be your advice to people who have that mentality to avoid having kids?
Turn off the news, number one. But number two is, look, I think it's natural, right? Like, when you're young, you don't have stability. How can you provide stability if you're not stable, right? We talked about it in the, top G husbands, right? The best quality of a husband is stability. Same thing with being a father. The same quality that takes it to be a good husband is the same quality to be a good father, which is stability. So how can you, think about bringing another life and supporting another life when you're not stable, right? So it's going to come with stability. The other problem is that I think the way that we've been raised, again, we've been raised to be career people, educated, high degrees, okay? But part of being a father is being responsible, and a lot of children now, a lot of kids, a lot of young adults, a lot of adults, they never had that responsibility put on their shoulders. You see during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where you had like commanders who were teenagers.
Yeah.
And we're like still like, God knows what we're doing when we're teenagers.
Yeah.
So like instilling this responsibility for others, I think is there. And then finally, you learn, right? Like, people have been having kids for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? And the mom figures it out, even if she's never touched a baby in her life. Allah puts that in her heart, and she is able to take care of this child like no other human being on the planet.
Right.
In that same way, there's something that comes into a father as well, and it's biology. It's our fitra, like, to know how to take care of this child. You know, so it's a sign of Allah. I always think like it's very difficult to perceive life until your parents pass away or you have kids, or both together, right? Because that's when you truly understand life.
Right. My next question, when you're mentioning that too, is another reason why people may delay having kids or not have kids at all is that they're worried that it might affect the relationship they have with their spouse.
That's huge.
So
man.
My question to you is, after having a kid, how did that impact your relationship with your wife?
That was hard.
Yeah.
Because think about, I mean, for me, right? It was just me and her for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And we, alhamdulillah, it was just full attention to each other. We had, our routines, we had our life. Then we have Idris come, right? Alhamdulillah, mashallah, like, there was a lot of attention we had to give to Idu. And so obviously that takes away from our relationship. But I think that it's natural for the relationship to change after you have kids. And you do have to put way more effort into your relationship. Because what happens is that your attention is to the kid. And I feel bad sometimes where, like, I come home and I start asking about Idu's day. Like, oh, how was his school? What did he do? What did he eat? When did he get up from his nap? Yeah. Did he poop today? And then it's like, oh, yeah, what'd you do today? Or, like, when I'm thinking, like, I'm thinking about him, or like when we're talking about him. And so, like, you really have to be kind of intentional about keeping that relationship strong.
So what are some tips and tricks that you've learned over the years to manage being a attentive father while also being an attentive husband?
I mean, alhamdulillah, we live like 1 minute away from Mama and Baba. So we're able to drop off Idris here and there. We're not the type to like leave him for hours, right? Like 2 hours at a time, maybe, every few weeks. But that's really important. Having kind of a nighttime routine where, like, we make sure that we spend at least an hour together after Idu goes to sleep, just talking, catching up or something like that. So yeah, you have to make time. You have to make time because your whole attention, your wife's attention is going to be on the child. but you have to turn towards each other.
Right. So why is it so important for you to maintain a positive relationship with your wife? Do you think that has a positive correlation to having respectable kids? Like,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the first way that a child is going to understand how to treat their own spouse is how did your parents interact with each other,
Yeah.
right? That's a huge thing. The other thing is just peace in the house. Like, our houses are supposed to be our sanctuaries, right? They're supposed to be the place where like you feel sakina,
Yeah.
and you feel relaxed, and like no one can bother you. Like your stress from the day is just checked at the door, right? And so you have to maintain that positivity with your wife, but you owe that to your children,
Yeah.
right? To give them that sukoon, calm, relaxed house. Like, can you imagine like kids coming home and like their parents are fighting all the time? Like, what kind of sukoon are they gonna have?
Yeah.
You know, what kind of upbringing are they gonna have? How are they gonna succeed in deen, dunya, akhir?
Yeah,
You know?
they're gonna look for any other type of mother and father
Yeah.
who don't fight,
Yeah.
right? They're gonna
Yeah.
look for another role model to look up to, right? Because
Exactly.
all kids growing up just want a role model,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if the parents aren't being role models or proper role models at home, or they might be the role models and it's gonna lead them to a dark path.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
So one of my other questions I want to ask you is how does being a dad, having kids, improve you as a Muslim?
I think it's put into perspective like what Allah is telling us in the Quran, right? Like each as you achieve different stages in your life, you can achieve different levels of understanding of the Quran, right? Like when you think about like when you were young, okay, maybe you related to Yusuf alayhi salam because you thought you were handsome and you thought that girls are gonna die and cut their hands, something like that, right? But then once you get married, then a different level opens up, and then once you have kids, dude, you think about like Ibrahim alayhi salam and his father.
Yeah.
Okay, and every time I hear about this story of Nuh alayhi salam,
Yeah.
dude, that
hurts.
just rocks my world every time I hear those ayahs.
Can you give a summary real quick in case people don't know?
So, the story is basically that Nuh alayhi salam, obviously he was preaching for many, many years, and he created the ark, and he's at this point where he's on the ark, he sees his child, and he's begging and pleading that his child comes onto the ark, and he's thinking, no, I got this, I'm just going to climb to the top, right?
Yeah.
And obviously he doesn't listen. Allah takes him, and Nuh alayhi salam calls out to Allah, like, you promised me that you are going to protect my family.
Wow.
And Allah responds and says that he's not your family.
Wow.
And like you think about that, you think about how Ibrahim alayhi salam treated his father. You think about the story between Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son and sacrificing Ismail alayhi salam. Like you look so many places in the Quran, it's about parent and child.
Yeah.
And if you want to understand Islam, you want to understand life, like you understand how the interaction between the prophets and their children and the people around them, and that's you and me.
Yeah. So how has love grown over the years for you, right? Because all of us have a certain type of love for your parents.
Yes.
Everyone has a certain type of love for your siblings, and then you have a separate love for your spouse. So how has love grown for you since having a kid? Has it expanded? Has it evolved? How has it changed?
Absolutely. Like, dude, you think you know love when you get married. You don't know love when you get married.
Yeah.
When you have a kid, that's when you start understanding love, dude. Like pure sacrifice. Like, honestly, like willing to, all this sounds so cliche, but it's so true. And I'm sure like people who don't have kids are like, what are these people talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I'm sure everybody who has kids can absolutely relate. Like, you would do anything for your kid, man. You do absolutely anything for your kid, physically, emotionally, financially, in every which way possible. You would sacrifice everything for your son or for your daughter.
Yeah.
And that is unfathomable if you don't have a kid.
Honestly, no, 100%. I could see how that is, and I'm completely honest here. I'm almost scared of having that love for someone, because growing up, when I have that negative aspect of kids, I know I'll have that love for the kid, right?
Yes.
So if anything like wrong happens to him, like just like any parent, they lose it.
Yeah.
So it's such a scary love to have, but that quote I always think about is better to have love than have love lost than to never have love at all.
Exactly.
Is that quote legitimate to you?
Absolutely. Look, man. I mean, again, the 10-year journey, miscarriages. There's so many different things, and obviously those things hurt and those things play a big, have a big impact on you. But yeah, absolutely, dude. Like you don't. That's what I'm saying. You don't understand life if until your parents pass away and until. And again, I'm not. My parents are here. I don't understand life. I'm not making that claim, but you have children.
Yeah.
Like the world is a different place when you have children. The news, everything around you is very different when you have children because that is what's driving humanity forward.
Yeah. No, that's definitely real, and that's another point I wanted to mention too. Is it our duty as a husband and wife to propagate society by having kids? Is that one of our duties in Islam?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it's natural. I mean, we're made to have children, and that's the way that we spread Islam. We're encouraged to have Islam or to have children. I do think that it's a primary purpose of marriage. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it? It's not hard. Like, let's say people have legitimate reasons not to have kids, right? Maybe they don't feel they're. Actually, this shouldn't be a reason, but financially, that should not be a reason to not have kids, right?
I don't know.
Right. So I guess like my question would be, I guess we should ask the scholar for this question.
Yeah.
Like
don't ask me.
Yeah, I guess I'll say this for another. Maybe if you have a scholar in one of our episodes, maybe you could ask them then.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's basically I appreciate this episode too because obviously I'm 2 or 3 years in, right?
Yeah.
And obviously kids is becoming a realistic idea of ours, right?
Yeah.
So again, growing up, I've always had a negative outlook towards kids, but after seeing like how Baba raised me, right? I want to double down on it with my own kids.
Yeah.
Because I know that Baba did such an amazing job with us and how he was as a parent. I hope that I want to be like him, but like times 10. But like if there are things that he might have missed out on and that I wish he did for me, I hope to pass that along to my kid, right? And another thing about kids too is like it almost gives you a chance to re-raise yourself.
It does.
Right? Because there's like some things that you wish you did growing up with your dad.
Yeah.
But like obviously there's some times where I didn't get to do that. And I hope that I get to do that with my kid as well, right? You can almost like you can like redo your mistakes from your past, even though they aren't necessarily mistakes. But
yeah, for me, it's like more so about activities. Like, okay, I get him like a soccer shirt. I'll get him like this shirt, like whatever. Like, I know it's a little stupid stuff like that, but like, be it soccer, be it like Ilyas and Duck or whatever. Like he's into. Like I just want him to have it, or like. Yeah. Something that I get into, I want him to have like a mini version of it or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, that's absolutely big, man.
Yeah. So I guess my last advice to you, I mean, obviously you could continue on, but this is like basically my last of questions, but what would be your advice to people who are scared to have kids, who for any reason don't want to have kids, and they just want to envision their life just with them and their spouse for the rest of their life and not have any kids?
Look, man, I mean, I think that, like I said, children, that's when you can understand life. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a drive. It carries on your name. It's sadaqah jariyah for you. You're leaving a stamp on this earth. I mean, there's so many reasons to have kids where like the negative reasons of, okay, it's expensive. I mean, Allah provides, right? And we understand that that's a very big component of being a Muslim. Your freedom, I think that, freedom is great in your 30s and 40s. But when you get to your 50s and 60s, like it's companionship, it's relationships, and it's something that people prided themselves on, and is having children, someone to serve you, but not only to serve you, but like someone to just give you company, someone that you are worried about, giving you a purpose, right? Like to serve somebody, to think about somebody, to make dua for somebody, and inshallah they make dua for you. And the other thing I would say is that as society's changing, our roles as men are changing, where we're not necessarily, we're supposed to be the breadwinners, but maybe we're just 50-50 providers, okay? And that's kind of the new world order.
Right.
I think the way to compensate for that is in fatherhood, right? In the sense that at the very least, make fatherhood your purpose, right? And I think that's going to be a very fulfilling role and something that we have a lot to offer our kids. We think that, they have to have their mother. Of course they have to have their mother.
Sure.
But for success, you need the father.
Yeah. And one thing that I know as men is that we want to leave a stamp or legacy when we go, right? And I heard this one quote, I think from some YouTube video or whatever, that they mentioned that there's 3 ways that men should do to leave a legacy. One is to plant a tree. because the tree will live beyond you.
Subhanallah.
Another one would be to write a book because people will read your book as you go on. And the last one was to have kids because those kids will live like beyond you and will donate on your behalf, and let's continue the name. So don't go against our fitrah. Our fitrah as men is to leave a legacy and to reproduce and to just be an example towards someone, and that's the best way to do all that is to have a kid. So don't deny your fitrah. Don't be scared of society. I know society's scary. Like people in the news are very negative outlook out there in the news, like all this gun violence, everything like that. But the world is actually a good place. You don't hear this enough.
Yeah.
But there's like, imagine just going outside. Me and you has probably met. You probably walked past or interacted with at least 100 people today.
Yeah.
And how many people did you wrong? No one, right?
Yes,
so we have a very negative outlook towards life for some reason, but the world is a good place, man.
I mean, the news gets you, right? But like on the daily, and here's the other beauty of Chicago is that we have our little enclave, right? Where we can go outside if we wanted to. We can send our kids to Islamic school. We can have them eat halal food, any type of halal food you can think of. They have like 10 different masjids to go to. We have third spaces they can go to. We have gyms they can go to. We have Muslim lawyers and doctors and accountants and tailors. Everything we can, inshallah, have our kids if we really wanted to. Only interact with Muslims and have a beautiful, wonderful life. Like, I don't buy this narrative of, the society is going to come and creep and, whatever. We have, alhamdulillah, resources, especially here in Chicago, to keep us within the fold, inshallah.
Yeah, Chicago, and I know like Dallas is doing great stuff there, and New York and Houston. There's pockets out there if you really want to put your kids in a Muslim environment.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Yeah. Another video we should do later on is if you want to put kids in private school or public school. That'd be a fun little video to do, right? Because I think me and you almost have different views about that.
No, I think so.
That would be nice to talk about.
That'd be a good one.
We'll save that.
Yeah,
I just thought of that right now.
We'll save that one, inshallah. Well, if you guys have any comments, please leave them in the comments. If you guys have any other ideas for topics, or even, I know these are all like serious topics. Maybe we could, have some fun later.
Yeah.
Do like a gym tour or like something.
Let's do it.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.